Hi, this is Country Carrie. I'm over to my friend's house, Melissa's, and she is going to show us how to do container gardening. She has many talents. One is in which she was my former violin teacher, and she's my dear friend. So we're going to take time and let her explain about her container gardening. Go ahead, Melissa.
All right, well, we live in a climate that's pretty cold and very short summer. Can be very intense heat during the morning and then cold at night, which is really hard for vegetables and fruits, especially tomatoes, which is like the favorite thing I think most people love to grow. So I'm going to show you here what I have figured out. We also live on sandy soil, and so I have found that just container gardens help too. I can control the soil, I can control a little bit more, just lots of different things where we live. And part of the great thing is also that I've got a house back here and a house up here, and so it keeps things from getting too windy. Tomatoes especially don't like a lot of wind. And so if you do live in a really windy climate, you need to find like a wall to put them against, or something to put up around them and shelter them from wind. So anyway, what I do is I use my soil each year, and I take and put fresh soil in it. I've got a friend who has kind of mulch that I can get from their yard. If you have manure or something that you can put in the fall and let it sit. The other thing that is really good for tomatoes especially is like crushed up eggshells, and so I'll put those in there. And then I usually do break down and buy just a kind of an all-around tomato fertilizer and put that in too. And then when you plant your tomato, we're going to try to get this on film, but I had to get them in the ground a couple weeks ago. You take your tomato plant and you bury almost the whole thing, only leaving out the top little tiny bit. And these were planted probably a month ago, and you can see they're pretty happy. They grow really fast if they're protected and they get enough water. And that's the other thing, is you can't let them, they need consistent water. So you have to keep that water even. And I'll show you a couple of the secrets that I do for that. So if you look in here, you can kind of see this. I've just used what I had. This was an old bed skirt that I don't use that I just didn't ever use. I have pillowcases, like heavy, like pillow, what is it called, shams. You can use any kind of material that you're just throwing away. They sell the, what's that called?
Like gunny sack?
Yeah, like gunny sack material, that's perfect.
Burlap.
But burlap, if you put that down around it, it'll help to keep the moisture more even, and it'll help to not have so many weeds come up. So I put that around there. These also had the green like little wall of waters when I first planted them, because we were still getting down to freezing at night. Well, not quite, but it would be about 32 to 34 degrees. And so they were started in that. Anywho, so I planted these guys. The other thing you want to do is see when they're little, and even right now, I'd rather this guy gets bigger before he starts doing fruit. So you just can pinch off their little flowers. A lot of times they come from the store with little flowers on them, and you don't want them trying to flower when they're trying to grow, because they'll just stop growing. And so we want them to be bigger before they start trying to put out fruit. Some of these, like this one, is getting bigger, and so we'll go ahead and I'll let him leave his fruit on there and put his fruit out. I put marigolds in there. I really haven't had a lot of problems with pests. I think that is also another benefit of container gardening, is that the pests don't seem to be able to get to the plants as easily because it's up off the ground, but marigolds help keep those pests away. So that's for the tomatoes. I think I already said, but take your old eggshells as you have them. I think I've got some over there, I'll show you, and you just can throw them in here and just smush them up as they dry and let those be around, because tomatoes need calcium. This is thyme, and I've had it live through the winter, but the last 2 years it hasn't lived through the winter. And so it just reseeds though. If you can see, the little baby thymes are coming up, and they will, by the end of the year, I'll have a whole bunch of thyme in here again. And so that's what I do there. These are chives that are also completely overgrown. Carrie and I are gonna split these today, and she's gonna take half of these home to her garden because they've filled this whole box. At least in our climate, chives are really easy. So this is something that everybody should be able to grow. But it's probably easiest to get a start from somebody and get part of it and take it home and plant it. I don't do anything for these except give them maybe a little fertilizer in the spring and keep them watered. Those are the eggshells you can see in there. And what I usually do is I just throw them in here when they're wet, and now they're dry. And then you can just kind of crush them all up in the soil, and that'll kind of get down into the soil. Over here is oregano that again just comes back every year, and it's kind of seeded. It's fallen all over the place. I think there's some over here on the ground. It's just kind of, it just sort of goes everywhere, but it's really good. In fact, we use this a lot in the summer. If I don't have basil, I'll chop this up instead of basil on tomato and caprese salads. This is tarragon, and I got a start from somebody else, one of my friends, and so this has been happy again year after year. Tarragon is great on fish and on potatoes, and I don't know if you can see over here, Carrie, but these are lettuces.
We'll kind of move around.
Yeah, so if you can see the lettuces, one of the things with lettuces is they do like to be covered. They don't like that intense, I don't know if you've got it in there. Can you see them? There you go.
I'm trying to figure out where to, there we go.
But that's why I have this, like, really, it's like I think it's like falling apart burlap or whatever this is called. And I just cover it so that it kind of keeps the intense sun off of it. And it really helps with seedlings. So I just started those right in here. I didn't have to start that beforehand. They're just right here. And these will be pretty good until it gets maybe way too hot.
Well, yeah, lettuce is a cool weather plant.
Yeah. And then these are, I got these a few years ago. This is garlic chives. And you can see they are very happy. They have a little garlicky flavor. And then I just bought a thing of basil and stuck it in here. So that's just the lazy way to do basil. But anyway, these are all tomatoes, and you can see they love this back wall because of the wall here keeps the heat during the night. And in Denver, I had tomatoes up against railroad ties, and that's also really good because the black heat keeps that heat in through the night, and they really love the same temperature. They don't like big temperature swings.
So why don't you tell us about your pots? Where did you find your pots?
So these we found at the dump. I think they were chemical, some type of chemical pot. I'm not sure what they had in them. Not a pot, what do they call those? They're great big drums, but they're plastic. And we just use a Sawzall and cut them in half. And then I put big rocks down in the bottom for water, and also to help keep the heat, because of the black heats up better than the blue, but the black gets nice and hot and heats up those rocks, that then also keeps the temperature more steady and stable, which for us is a problem. And then we just took I just took a drill and drilled holes all around them so that it can let the water out.
Oh, that's good thinking.
Yeah.
The rocks in the bottom also help with that drainage too.
Yeah, it helps with the drainage and with that, and so yeah, it can kind of keep that. And then these are really, this has been my best. I bought the tomato cages before, but they're actually pretty expensive and they're flimsy. Like they only seem to last like a year or two. Where I got these years ago, so this is just more like that big fencing, and I've used that, and I've just got them, and then I use some of the stakes that hold it in place, and then I can kind of train the tomato up into this, and it's less expensive and it works better to keep them upright.
Well, and it keeps the critters out, or like say the deer. coming in.
Yeah, we don't get too many down here because I think there's too many dogs. But if you did have a problem with deer, say something like this would be great because it'll keep them at least away, not being able to get in and eat them. But yeah, I think that's about it. Anything else?
I think
that
that's
forgot?
great. So again, this is Country Carrie, and country is caring and sharing, and I'm glad my friend Melissa cared enough to share this with me and with you. Have a good day and happy gardening.